Hey there guys, Pastor Gary here. It is good to be able to come to you again. And I'm going to come to you today with a book that is known as Ardent Wrestler. Now you say, wait a minute, what do you mean Ardent Wrestler? I don't remember that in the Bible. Well, it's known as Habakkuk, but the wording of Habakkuk means something similar to an ardent wrestler. I'm sorry, I can't see me in a onesie wrestling around, known as the Ardent Wrestler. I was more of a Jimmy Superfly Snuka kind of fan myself. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about this book today and our never-ending quest as we go through that, which is off-road. It's a derivative. That's why we have our Jeep back here. It's taken from Study 66, which we've been doing on Sunday mornings. And if you come to church this week, we will be in the book of Habakkuk. Once again, a great book, minor prophet, lots of neat stuff in it, and we kind of tear it apart and discuss it, so come on out. We're still on Wednesday evenings, by the way, in the book of Amos. We'll be finishing that up soon. So anyway, Habakkuk, chapter 1, verse 1, which just simply tells us, as it comes up on my computer is what I'm looking for here. Here it is. The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. Now, the idea of an oracle, it sort of has this mysterious connotation to it. And I believe it was last week also we talked about the oracle of Nahum. And this is an oracle. And what it is something that's kind of mysterious, I guess you could say. But it's something to do with what they were writing, what they were seeing, and so forth. Now, we know with Habakkuk himself, okay, Wednesday we're going through the book of Amos. Amos seems like he was a regular guy, right? He tended his flocks, and he also tended his fig trees. So he was more of a farmer / rancher kind of guy. He was not a religious man. He was not trained in religion. Now, by the time you get to Habakkuk, though, he was what we would call, I guess, a trained prophet is what he was. And so he either came up through prophetic schools. They used to have prophetic schools back then, or as a priest. However it was, we see him being more trained in what he was doing. The book was probably written between 610 years or 605 years before the time of Christ. And of course, what he was speaking about were the sins of Judah. And I find it kind of interesting, whereas most prophets arise on the scene to warn Judah or Israel of incoming doom, whereas our writer, as Habakkuk here says, God, where are you? Why aren't you bringing judgment to these people? So whereas the prophets are normally kind of defending, warning, here he is absolutely decrying God and saying, how come you're not bringing judgment against these people? They're very wicked, is what he's saying. And so in other words, that's what he was speaking about here in most part. Now, he will get to the fact of the people that will be coming in, known as the Chaldeans, or otherwise known as the Babylonians. He will be speaking about them also and saying, why would you use such an even more ungodly people, the Chaldeans, Babylonians, to bring judgment against your people, the people of Judah, which, by the way, again, he said, hey, these guys are wicked and evil and they deserve punishment. But then Habakkuk says, so why would you choose somebody so much more wicked to bring judgment against them? A few key points here, Habakkuk 1 and 2. How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you, violence, but you do not save? Habakkuk is saying, look, I bring these things up. I want to see justice prevail. I want to see judgment happen. Habakkuk 1 and 5. Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. Now, this is God's response to what Habakkuk brings about. God says, well, you just simply watch what happens. You'll be utterly amazed, for I am going to do something amazing or something in your days that you won't believe, even if I told you in advance. Habakkuk, you won't believe what's about to happen. I've had those things happen in my life, If God would have told me, I wouldn't have believed it. I had to see it, and I had to see it go on. Habakkuk 1 and 12. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. In other words, Habakkuk is proclaiming the longevity of God. And because God, you have longevity. We will, as your people, also have longevity. Habakkuk 2 and 2 through 4. Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. In other words, it's not going to happen yet. It's going to happen down the line. But at the end of it will speak and will not die. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Behold, the proud, his soul is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Okay, break it down. The Chaldeans, Babylonians, prideful, arrogant people. God chooses them to use to bring judgment. But God is saying, listen, these people, their end is going to come. Just wait. It's going to happen. They're going to be wiped out. But those who are willing to walk and live by faith, they will find that they will live. And that's how they will live. Remember, God says in the book of Hebrews, it's faith that pleases God. We walk by faith. And so God's currency in heaven is faith. So always understand that. The wicked will have their end. The wicked will suffer the punishment that they deserve to. But God's true people, there is longevity. Whether it's here and now on terra firma, the earth, or whether it's going to be in the other world. And, as we leave this world and go to God's world, we will certainly see that the just shall live by faith there. By the way, the verse that, of course, that monk known as Martin Luther would hang his hat upon when he was launching Reformation in the church, he realized the just shall live by faith, not by works, but by faith. Paul would allude to it in the book of Romans about the just living by faith. Remember, it's not a work that we do, it's by faith that we portray is what it is. We see in Habakkuk 2 and 20, the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. There's prophetic utterance in that verse, by the way. When you get to the book of Revelation, and as God's judgments are being poured out, before he gets to the last one, there's silence in heaven for about a half an hour is what it is. And so it's sort of a derivative of this verse. And he will say in Habakkuk 3 and 19, the sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread to the heights. Hinds feet on high places, by the way. If you've ever read that book by Hannah Hurnard, that is where that is taken from, right there. So the book of Habakkuk begins with Habakkuk crying out to God for an answer why God's chosen people are allowed to suffer in their captivity. That would be Habakkuk 1 through 4 we get there. And the Lord will give the answer and essentially say, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. And this is when he's going to tell them what's coming. Then along in Habakkuk 1, 5 through 11, Habakkuk then will follow up with follow-up questions. Okay, you are God, but still tell me more about why this is happening. God answers in chapter 1, 17 through chapter 2 and verse 1. God answers him again and gives him some more information. This is a constant where Habakkuk is asking questions and pressing into those questions, and sometimes they almost sound like complaining, or they're kind of like he's saying to God, God, I don't get this. I don't understand why it's happening. God's very patient and says, hey, you just wait. You'll see what's going to unfold. You're going to understand, and you're going to see what I'm going to do is what I'm going to do. And so it goes through chapter 2 through 20 with this prayer that he writes, and we will see that by the time we get down to Habakkuk chapter 3, you're going to see this wonderful poetic response. In fact, many scholars say that the book of Habakkuk is a wonderful piece of poetic prose, and God is worshipped in chapter 3. So Habakkuk spends a lot of time questioning God, but then he eventually ends up with the worship of God. Do you do the same? Do you find yourself questioning God? Do you find yourself wondering why God is doing certain things? But because you are willing to live by faith, the just shall live by faith. Because you're willing to live by faith, you will eventually come back to the point where you worship him. Sometimes that's what has to happen in our life. We have questions. God's a big God. He can handle questions. But somewhere along the line, you better reestablish the fact that you worship him, that you ascribe great value to him. If not, unfortunately, that can be some problems down the line for you. And so what do we see? Well, in the book of Habakkuk, he will eventually end up still with respect and reverence for our God. Good places to end up. There is no doubt about it. So that's just a little short summary of the book of Habakkuk, why things go on the way they do. And of course, Sunday when we get into it, we will tear it apart, figure it out a little bit more, and you will find some really, really interesting things in this great book. I think, again, one of the more relevant books that we read in the Bible. So I hope you'll be blessed. A little short snippet for you today. And trust me, appreciate the short ones when you get them, because usually they're huge. Be blessed.